Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masech the Zevachim, Daf Chaf Dalid. We're going to begin on Chaf Dalid with Aleph, the third line from the top. Oymin al gabi kalim, al gabi behema, al gabi ragli chavero posel. So the Mishnah said that when it comes to doing the avoda, your feet must be mamish on the ground. You cannot have any chatzitza separating your feet, which of course Kohanim don't wear shoes or socks. It has to be directly on the ground. And therefore, if he's standing on a kli or an animal or even his friend's foot, that's also not good. So Manol, how do we know that this is so problematic that it is actually postling the avodah? Since so we're going to compare a kli shares to the floor. Ma kli shares, just like the kli shares, kli shares, there can't be any separation. The kli shares, whatever's put into the kli shares, there can't be anything separating. The dam has to go right into it, and also you have to be holding it. You can't have a chatzitza between your hand and the kli shares. Av ritzbo ritzbo. So too, your feet have to be touching the floor. And Rashi says, Lamid l'sharish shahari David kitsha b'shtei toidais v'shir shel pigoyim. So David Melech, he sanctified the floor, that area of the Beis Hamikdash. We'll see if it's only the surface or maybe even to the depths. That we're going to see in a second. But before that, Utsrich the Gemara wonders, why do we need to mention these three forms of chatzitza? Just say you have to have your foot on the ground. If you don't, then it's a chatzitza. So diashmin and kli mishum mina the basar ninhu. So you can see, obviously, putting your foot onto a kli is not good because it's an inanimate object. However, when it comes to, let's say, being on top of an animal, so that's basar, just like your foot is basar. It's not a person, it's an animal. So you would think it's not so problematic when a person is stepping on another person's foot. It's like your own foot. We know that's not acceptable. Same thing when it comes to wearing a kippah. If you don't wear a yarmulke, you can't put your hand over your head. That doesn't count. However, if someone else puts their hand over their head, you could say a bracha. Because there's a distinction between your basar and someone else's. Okay. Tanya. Rabbi Eliezer Oimer, Rago achas al kli. Let's say one foot is on a kli, Rago achas al ritzba, and one's on the floor. So at least he has 1 foot on the ground. Or Rago achas al evan, he has a foot on a stone, Rago achas al ritzba. Royin, we make the following assessment. Kol she'il yadatul hakli v'tinatel ha'evan yachal amid al Rago achas v'yavoid avodas u'ksher v'imlav avodas psula. Simply, we imagine if he would have all of his weight on 1 foot by removing the kli or the evan, and basically he's only on 1 foot. Is that enough that he would still be able to stand? If so, then it's kosher. If not, possible. So, by Rabbi, poses the following question. Let's say you have a stone which is shaky or a bit dislodged, and you're standing on this dislodged rock. So let's say you have no intention of fixing this shaky rock, so it's definitely a chatzitza. There's nothing to talk about. That's not good. Your intention is to fix it. Since it's gonna be fixed, it's like it's fixed already, therefore it's not a problem. Right now it's like detached, hatalisha, and therefore maybe it's not good. So it's kind of like, your wife asks you to do some cleaning around the house, when I get around to it. So sometimes the things around your house may get fixed, may not get fixed so fast. Of course, as a Beis Hamikdash is obviously different. Rabbi Zuti Boil Hachi, he posed a question differently. Bar Ravami, Nekra Evan, let's say the stone is completely removed from its space. Now, V'omad Bim Kaima, now you're sitting in its crevice, in a hole, Mao. And the question is, you're standing in that crevice. So are you able to do the avodas or is a chatzitza? So kama boile ki kaddish David ritzba el yain kaddish o dilma ad l'oris did the Kaddish? How much did David HaMelech, when he sanctified that area, did he only sanctify the very top layer, or all the way down to the very depths? So V'tiboile kol hazara kula. Understand? If in fact that's the kasha, let's imagine that the entire Azara was ripped out, and you're standing on a different floor. So why are we talking about only on one stone that was removed? So oilam shitale the ad aris de tahim kaddish. First of all, David HaMelech was mekadosh the entire ground all the way down to the depths. So therefore, really, it shouldn't be an issue. And therefore, certainly that's the reason why we didn't ask the kasha by the Azara. If the whole thing was removed, so then it's definitely not a problem because it's all the same floor. This is the kasha. Derech shiras bekach, o ein derech shiras bekach teku. Says Rashi, mi havi orech ara. Is this the normal fashion of doing an avoda, and therefore it's considered shirus, or it's not? Keku. Let's look at question 3. So what's the din? If you have this stone that was a bit shaky, so as we mentioned, if your das is never to fix it, then it's definitely a chatzitza. If your das is to fix it, it's a question. 3b, nekra ritzbas kol hazara. If the entire floor of the azara is ripped out, and according to the avoda, is the avoda kosher, so the avoda is kosher. Because we said the fact they didn't ask the kasha except on one stone and being in that crevice, you could have asked about the whole azara, must be because the whole azara is okay. TA4. So what's the studim of the suffix? So in the Havamina, the question is David, was he Makadosh only? They didn't only sanctify the floor, the upper floor, all the way down to the depths. The Maskana, we said no, all the way to the Tahoim. And the question is, Ihavi derech shirus bekach. Okay, let's keep going. So the Mishnah concluded Kiba b'smoil pasim Rav Shimon machsher. So it's actually a machlokas. Of course, the avoda is supposed to be done with your right hand. What happens if the avoda instead was done with the left hand? So this is the Gemara's brings as a Mishnah as a machlokas. So it's Tanoban. So be'etzba v'lokach. So the pasuk in its entire says like this: V'lokach hakayim medam hachatos be'etzba'i. So he took the dam hachatos with his finger, v'nosan al karnos mizbach ha'oila, and then he put the dam on the corners of the mizbach. So there's two things that are happening here. One is the kabbalas dam, him catching or receiving the blood, and the second is the placement or the zrikas adam on the mizbech. So over here it mentions the word etzba, a finger, and we're going to see whether or not the word etzba is going on before, after, or both. That's going to be brought down on Amud Beis. So the Gemara says like this: Be'etzba v'lokach v'lamish l'tei kabal el b'yamin. The fact it says v'lokach, the beginning of the pasuk v'chachakayin, and it says be'etzba, it must be that the kabbalas hadam must be with the right hand. Be'etzba v'nasan, but then when it says be'etzba v'nasan v'lamish l'tei nesina el b'yamin. So in other words, the word be'etzba, according to the Shita, can be read before and after for the Kabbalah and the Nesin. Rav Shimon, so in this Rav Shimon says, V'chi nemer yad be'Kabbalah, el be'etzbo be'nasan. It actually says be'etzbo, and he holds that the be'etzbo is going on be'nasan, on the zrika. Shalote nesin el b'yamin, that the zrikas adam, the putting of the blood, or the sprinkling of the blood, has to be with the right hand. However, never yad be'Kabbalah, but doesn't say anything over by Kabbalah, so kibbutz b'smol kosher. So he holds actually that Kabbalah v'lokach hakayin can be with the left. Rav Shimon Mamonshach. I understand. According to Rav Shimon, who says that when it comes to when is the right hand necessary, that's by the Zrika. When can the left hand be done? That's by the Nesina. So he makes a distinction. But Mamonshach, either way you look at it, it's problematic. Why? Because easily Gzer Shava, if he holds of the Gzer Shava, what it Gzer Shava? So Rashi says, the Yad Yad the Kamitza min Matzayra. Now, when it comes to the Mitzayra, we know for sure it's with the right. Dechsiv Bey, Al Bohin Yodo HaYamonis. that when it comes to the application of the dam of the Mitzayra, it's on the right earlobe, the right finger, and the right toe. It says explicitly Yomonis. So therefore, using Gzer Shava, Yad, Av Kol Makam Shnemer Yad, Enu El Yamin. So the Gzer Shava tells us that just like the Mitzayra, so too, whenever else we find the word Yad, it's the right. So, B'Marshach. Is Gzer Shava, that everything's supposed to be with your right hand. So, Kilo Nemer Yad B'Kabbalah My Havi. What's the difference that it doesn't say Yad B'Kabbalah? Right? It should still not be allowed to be done with the left hand, as Rashi says, because Hari Nemer Ba Etzba. It does say the word Etzba. V'nelef Etzba Nami Mahasam. And we learn out also Gzer Shavat Etzba by the Mitzayra. And therefore, just like again, it's with the right, so too over here, it's with the right. So if he holds Gzer Shava, so then Kabbalah also must be with the right hand. If he doesn't learn out from the Mitzayra, so Ki Nemer Yad B'Kabbalah My Havi. What's the difference? There's no Gzer Shava, so how do you know it's the right anyway for anything? So Amar Yehuda L'Olam Leisli Gzer Shava. He actually does not hold the Gzer Shava. So if he doesn't hold the Gzer Shava, so then why does he hold, just because it says Etzba, that when it comes to the Kabbalah Saddam, that has to be with the right hand? This is what he's coming to say. It doesn't say that it has to be the right hand. That's the reason why you could use the left hand. So Rabbi, I understand. It doesn't say Yad Yamin by the Zrika either. So why does he say it has to be with the right hand? Furthermore, the Rav Shimon Gzer Shava, is it really true that he doesn't hold the Gzer Shava? I'll show you he actually does. But Rav Shimon Omer, we see that Rav Shimon actually says, Kol Makom Shnemer Yad, Eno El Yamin Etzba, Eno El Yamin. Etzba, Eno El Yamin. So he says clearly that it needs to be with the right hand. So how does he know that? It must be because he holds the Gzer Shava. So actually he does hold the Gzer Shava. So if he holds the Gzer Shava, I can understand why then the Zrika Saddam must be with the right hand and not with the left. But how about the Kabbalah? Maybe the Kabbalah also needs to be with the right. But Haki Kamer, the Chi Nemer Yad B'Kabbalah doesn't know Yad. However, Nemer Yad B'Kabbalah El Etzba. It only says the word Etzba. The Efshel L'Kabel B'Etzba, and it can't be referring to using the finger, because the sprinkling can be done sprinkling with a finger. However, the Kabbalah Saddam cannot be with a finger. So Kibbutz Masmol Kosher. So you can't physically do Kabbalah of a Kli with just a finger. So it must be coming to tell you that it has nothing to do with that word cannot be going on the Kabbalah, because it's not Shaykh, the word Etzba, by being Makabal the Dam. Where it says, is that true? So Amelie Rav Sama Rav Ashi Rabino Efsher the Avid le oizen. Maybe you made a handle l'sfas mizrak makabel. Maybe you actually were able to makabel it with just one finger, right? So maybe again with one finger, putting your hand around. Okay, a kli, just a regular kli, you can't balance it with a finger, but you could hold if you put your hand, your finger inside of a handle, right, of a cup, so you could hold it up with one finger. So what are you talking about? It is a possibility. Again, in Shiras Bakach, you'd probably say Elam Rabaya. So instead, we have a different interpretation as we continue Chavdal Mabez. The whole question is, how do we read, as I mentioned, this word Etzba? Where is it going to teach? The Mikra Nidra Shulchan Achar Kamifagi. The whole machlokas is, how do we look at that word Etzba? Do we say it's only going on the word afterwards, and therefore it's only going on Zrika? Is it going on the word before? It's only talking about Kabbalah. Is it potentially for both, and therefore both are required to be in the right hand? Some Rabbi, Had Rabbi Lezer Rav Shimon Mafkim Avu Mafkim Rabbanon. Actually, it was derived from these people, the Sanya. Rabbi Lezer Rav Shimon Oimer Kol Makam Shenemer Etzba B'Kabbalah. Anytime it says the word Etzba, like for example in this pasuk regarding Kabbalah, but it's V'loy b'nesina, Rashi says, not when it comes to catching the blood, to the sprinkling of the blood. For example, this pasuk that we said before, because Rabbi Lezer is darish when it comes to the word etzba, it's going on the word before. It's lafana v'lo noisin. He says that the word etzba goes on the word before, not the word afterwards. So shina b'kabbalah apostles. Therefore, if you deviate from the way you're supposed to do the kabbalah, it's apostle. However, b'nesina kosher, because in fact that's the reality, that it's the kabbalah that is the problem, because it says etzba, and etzba is going on the word v'lakach hakohen, which is the kabbalah. V'kol makom shenemer etzba b'nesina. Anytime it says etzba specifically by nesina, by the zrika, shina b'nesina pasuk kabbalah kosher. In other words, it's basically saying it all depends on the context. If the word in fact is talking about zrika, then you're right. Then you would have to do the zrika with your right hand. But it's all totally on the language. So this pasuk is only going on the kabbalah sadam. So 1 second. V'hecha nemer etzba b'nesina. Where do we actually see that the word etzba is also going on the kabbalah, on the zrika rather? Because the pasuk says, and we'll see this pasuk in its entirety in Sefer Birka Daled, v'lakach hakohen medamachatas be'etzboi, right? So he took from the dam of the chatas be'etzboi, okay, and then it says, there's called dama yishboi chel yisam mizbeach, and all the blood was poured onto the Yisrael Mizbeach. And then the next pasuk says, in pasuk Shemos Chavtes, which is the pasuk we want actually, they took from the dam of the par, and he put it on the Mizbeach, be'etzboecha, with his finger. So here clearly this pasuk, when it's talking about the sinas hadam, is talking about it being be'etzba. So over here, this is the v'nasata, the nasina. So therefore that's the pasuk. V'nasata comes mizbeach be'etzboecha. Uksaver mikra nidush fanav v'lefnei fanav lacharav. So according to him, you could learn the pasuk before, but not before and back. So again, the whole question is it Kabbalah, is it Zrika, or is it both? Question 4. Ksib b'chatas v'lakach hakoyin, which we translate as the Kabbalah, v'lakach hakoyin midam achatas be'etzba'oi, v'nosan al karanos. So al eza avoida hamiskaris b'pasik zeh koi kra be'etzba'oi, that you have to therefore be with your right hand. So according to Rav Shimon, the drasha is lacharav. That's only talking about the zrika. According to Rav Shimon, it's lafanav, and therefore it's going to the Kabbalah. According to Rav Shimon, nidrish olafanav ve'acharav, it's before and afterwards, v'koya tervayu, and therefore it's going on both. And that's the whole drasha over here. Is it going on before and afterwards? Is it only going on afterwards? Okay, and that's the machlokas. Anytime it says the word etzba and the word kahuna, eino el yamin, that extra word of kahuna means it must be with the right hand. So kol sagadaitin tarti beinan. It sounds like you actually need to have both of those words together in order for it to be with your right hand. K'dichsiv, like it said in the pasuk before, v'lakach hakoyin midam achatas be'etzboi. So it says the word koyin, and it says be'etzboi. V'yelv mi'matzayra, so when we went up from Matzayra, d'chsev v'tavel hakoyin es etzbo, hayomanis. Then it says over there, it says the word koyin, and it says etzbo, and it's with the right hand. V'hari kamitza, however, when it comes to the kamitzas of the mincha, d'luksi be'el kahuna, it doesn't say the word etzba, v'tanan kamatz b'small puzzle. So we see al chayra, you don't need both. El omarava, o etzba, o kahuna. Either one is enough to make you have to use the right hand. However, when it comes to bringing the various limbs to the ramp, kahuna, it does say kahuna, which therefore, as we're saying up until this point, that means it should have to be with the right hand. But hikr b'koyin is called v'hikter hamizbecha. This is referring to bringing the limbs up. The Tanan, but we learn regel shel yamin b'smoil, that the regel of the right is with the left hand. Ubeis ayru chutz, and its skin stays on the outside. But the point is that it says clearly that not only is it kosher, but it seems like that's what you're supposed to do. So ki kamrinan o etzba o kahuna, when we say you can use either word etzba or kahuna, that means it has to be the right hand. It's b'davar ha'ma'akiv kapara, doma de mitzayra. It's something which is ma'akiv the kapara, something which is comparable to like sprinkling the blood, the hazah of the mitzayra, or for example kamitza. However, haylechas ivarim deloi ma'akva kapara, it's not ma'akiv. Tehu atzmishul hukteru emurin kosher. As we said many times, if you were not makter the sacrificial parts, it's still a kapara, so therefore you don't need. So you're right. Normally when it says kahuna or etzba alone, either word would be enough to say it has to be the right, can't be the left. However, if we're dealing with a situation where it's something which is not ma'akiv the avoda, then of course it shouldn't matter. I have a hari Kabbalah, when it comes to Kabbalah Saddam, the pasuk says kahuna, and that's v'davar hama'akev v'kapara. You need to obviously do the Kabbalah Saddam, because if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to do the Zrika, and of course that's the ultimate kapara. So you would definitely think it's basically what we're saying. It follows these two criteria. It has the word kahuna, and it also is ma'akev in the avoda for kapara. So therefore, you should for sure say Kabbalah with the left hand is going to be possible. But Tanan kibbutz b'small possible Rav Shimon makshir. So why does Rav Shimon say it's kosher? It shouldn't be kosher. So Rav Shimon tarti boy, because Rav Shimon actually requires both. Does he have to have both words? So me boy Rav Shimon tarti v'san Rav Shimon aimer kol malcham shnemer yad and el yamin. All you need is the word yad, one. You don't need to have two words. So etzba enu el yamin. When it says etzba, that's the right. Etzba lo boy kahuna. The word etzba doesn't need the word kahuna, but kahuna boy etzba. The word kahuna needs etzba. So the fact that it just says kahuna, that's not enough. If it just says etzba, that would be enough. So if that's the case, what's the purpose of saying the word kahuna at all? There's no need, because if kahuna doesn't tell you it must be the right hand, it's only with the word etzba, so what's the purpose of saying kahuna? The answer says, where it says, bikihunoi, in the status of being a kohen. In other words, you need to be wearing your big kahuna. It doesn't say both. It only says the word kahuna by zrika. Does not zark with small apostle. The low power Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon is an argument when it comes to that. Now, of course, zrika is ma'akev, but we also said that Kabbalah is ma'akev. So the problem is that the word kahuna apparently should not be enough. So Amar Rabbi Poli bebraisa. He argues in the braisa. The Sanya Kibo b'smoil apostle. If you do Kabbalah with the left hand's apostle, Rav Shimon Machshir. Zark b'small apostle, Rav Shimon Machshir. So we actually see that's not true. The Rav Shimon actually is Machshir also when it comes to the Zrika, for the reason as we said, because it only says the word kahuna, it doesn't say the word etzba. Elohadi Amar Rabbi Yad Yad L'Kamitza. We have this Gzer Shava. Yad, when it comes to Kamitza, says Rashi. In Parshas Mitzayra, it says al toinuch oizen hayemonis, al boihen yada hayemonis, al bohen ragul hayemonis. As we said, that the applications of the blood on the Mitzayra. And this is an extra pasuk. The Ka'imur Rava Yad Mitzayra asal Gzer Shava. That it's coming to tell us Gzer Shava lemigmor Yad the Kamitza mine chetebi yamin. That the Kamitza also has to be with the right hand. The Hecha Kasav Yad b'Kamitza Yemoi Kappa Mimena, because it does say the word Yad over there. So that's the Gzer Shava when it comes to Yad. Regel l'chalitza. So that the chalitza must be done with the right as well, the right foot. Oizen l'ritzia. When it comes to the person who is an Eved Ivri and he was there for more than 50 years, and he wants to stay there as a nirtza, so we bore with an awl, A-W-L, in his right ear. So why do we need all these different things, right? It shouldn't be necessary. You should be able to know this based on the words of the Pesukim themselves. So Midrabba Barachana Nafka. It should be known this din because it's from the word kahuna, that the word is enough to say it's the right hand. So Chad l'kaimetz. So one is l'kaimitz. That when it comes to kamitza, b'chad l'kiddush kaimitz. What does that mean? Says Rashi, b'kli sharis, she'ehei b'yamin. That when you put the kaimitz, after you do the kamitza, you have to put it. You have to do the same arba avodos. So like shchita, you do the kamitza, and then you take that flour and you put it into a kli sharis. Shiyachos hakli. When you hold the kli, shu mekadishmo biyadu hayimanas. You're supposed to be holding it in your right hand. So that's also the chiddush. It has to be in the right hand when it comes to the kabbalas hakamitza. Chav Ham and Aleph. Rav Shimon, the little boy kiddush kaimitz, according to him, who says that you don't need this. Says Rashi, Shalo b'kli sharis psul Rav Shimon machsher. So Amad Yom Rav Shimon nami boy kiddush kaimitz. So according to the one who says that Yutaka do need commit, it has to be done properly. The smoil akshuri machsher. The left is just a machsher. Yad the rubble lumli. So what needs is gzer shava. So ilu kamitza atzma. If it's coming to tell you that the kamitza itself has to be right hand, mid Rabbi Yehuda Bereda Rav Chia nafka. Yom Rabbi the Omer Rabbi Yehuda Bereda Rav Chia. My time in Rav Shimon the Emer Kra. What is the reason of Rav Shimon? Because the pasuk says Kodesh Kedoshim Hi Kachatas Ka'asham. It's like a chatas, like an asham. So this is the kasha. Why does Rav Shimon hold? Says Rashi, the machshir hakadaris kaimitz shlo b'kli, that you can even do the burning of the kamitza even if you don't even put it into a kli sharis, because it says kachatas ka'asham. So ba lavoida ba l'oivda. Biyad oivda biyamin kechatas. Bal oivda b'kli oivda b'smoil ka'asham. So he says like this. Let's look at Rashi. So when it comes to minchas kodesh kadashim hu hachi yiskish minchas chatas yasham loy milcha bal oivda biyad. If you have an obligation to use your hand, then oivda biyamin. Then you have to use your right hand kechatas. Just like when you have the carbon chatas, shizrikas dama biyamin. That the zrika of the blood must be the right. But matan etzba v'lo b'kli. However, when it comes to, let's say, using your fingers and not using a kli, ubo yamin, you also needs to be with your right hand. Echsiba etzba ukahuna. Okay. However, bol of the b'kli of the b'smoil ka'asham. Shizrika b'kli, when you do zrika in a kli, v'hik shera b'smoil. In that case, you could use your left. Rav Shimon Kedormel El Zark with small pulse. Rav Shimon Machsher. So Rav Shimon actually says okay. E boy biyad, if you need your hand of it, e b'kli of it. When male nafka kamitza yamin, the avodas yad he v'lo avodas kli. So since it's avodas yad, Hitaka holds it has to be done with the right hand. So again, let's look at this. So he says kachat chasham bol of the biyad of the yamin. If the avoda like the kamitzas with your hand, you have to use your right hand. Kachatas bol of the b'kli of the b'smoil. That if you want, you could use the left hand if it's a kli. Ka'asham. Well, nitzracha el kaimitz minchas chayte. So it's coming to talk about the kamitz of a minchas chayte. What is that referring to? We don't want, as it's brought down in the beginning of Masechtas Menachos, someone who sinned, and it's a minchas chayte because it's a situation of an oil yared, so he can bring even flour. So we don't want it to be beautified. We don't want them to therefore accompany it with oil and frankincense. However, shliach chayte nizker we don't want it to be muhudr. Since when it comes to the minchas chayte, it's lenient that we don't require shemen, we don't require levina. So too maybe you would think that if it's done with the left hand, it's not a problem. So the chiddush is the gzer shav yad yad that it must be with the right hand. So even though you would think by minchas chatois, in which we are already we're lenient by it because we allow you to use your right hand, you're allowed to you do it without shemen levina. So maybe you can also use the left hand. Question 5. Lama Xer Shavi Yadyan Mamasar Kamitza should he be a min. Vahar Yaimer Kol Hechad Ksiv Kahuna Hainu Yamin. So, as we just said, according to one man, the Aimer, it's come to tell us Kiddush HaKaimitz. That when it comes to Kiddush HaKaimitz, you have to use, when you use a Kli Sharis, it has to be with your right hand. L'chad man the Aimer L'minchas Chayte. That even a Minchas Chayte needs to be with the right hand. So that's the other interpretation. Question TA 4 we saw, TA 5 will be in tomorrow's daf. TB 4. Elu mehavados ksheros Rav Shimon b'smoil. Which one does Rav Shimon say it works b'smoil? Kabbalah, Zrika, Kamitza, Kiddush, Kaimitz. Very hard question. Very hard question. But let's get through this. Let's go slow. So, first of all, according to Rav Shimon, it says Kibel b'smoil, Posel, Rav Shimon Machsher. Okay, so clearly when it comes to Kabbalah, it's a machlokas, but according to him, clearly Rav Shimon is Machsher. Okay, so that's TB4. Also, so that's by Kabbalah. And then it also says Zarik B'Smoil, Posel, Rav Shimon Machsher, right? So it says, so what I wrote, Kabbalah V'Zrika Yesh Machlokas Im Darshan Lefanav, okay, Olacharav, okay, I hear that, but it's not asking you why, but Yesh Machlokas, Rav Shimon Machsher, okay, that's the first. And then Kamitza in Kiddush, so by Kiddush Kaimitz, Rav Shimon the little boy Kiddush Kaimitz, he doesn't even require Kiddush Kaimitz, right? So if he doesn't require Kiddush Kaimitz, so it's obviously he's Machsher, okay? So that's TB4. So again, we see by Kiddush Kaimitz, he's a Machsher. He's Machsher by Kiddush Kaimitz. Okay. And that's on Chaf Haim and Aleph. And Kamitza. Hadi Rabbi Yad Rabbi Kamitza Lamali. So it seems like when it comes to Kamitza, it definitely has to be a min, right? So Kamitza Aser. I think that's actually the right answer. It sounds like Kabbalah, Zrika, and Kiddush Kaimitz, Rav Shimon is Machsher. But when it comes to Kamitza, then it is, it's Aser. It's not Aser, it's Puzzle, right? That sounds like the right answer there. Okay, I'd cut.